Sen so sep good sen good godels lo bach do stage mich.
Good evening, everyone. We're the Save St. Francis Xavier group. We are we are interested in some buildings, the St. Francis Xavier campus, the Catholic block at Spruce and Orange and at Pine and Orange. It's the old McCormick edition. It is a National Historic eligible block. All four buildings have been declared a National Historic District. I have with me some panelists who are interested in the subject, and tonight we're going to explore, our program is History Speak 3, and we'll be exploring the relationship of Ignace Lamousse and Anthony Ravalli to the state of Montana, to the history of the state of Montana. Why did they come to Montana, and what was their legacy? What is their legacy? How can we share in that legacy and their vision? So with me tonight are panelists, and I'm going to ask the panelists to introduce themselves. Jeffrey Stevens.
Yes, my name is Jeff Stevens. I was a student at St. Francis grade school back in the 50s and early 60s, so I'm very definitely interested in seeing that this building is preserved and then reused in a very constructive and viable fashion for the future. I think it has a considerable historic significance, but I also realize that in order to preserve historic buildings, we need to imagine and implement creative ways to utilize them for the future.
Thank you, Jeff. The next is Mary Fran Moylan.
I'm Mary Fran Moylan. I've been in the parish, St. Francis Xavier Parish here in Missoula for about nearly 28 years. And our children went through we have 4 children, and they went through the Loyola High School. And so we're very interested in, and have always seen this historic district as a dynamic one. It's only been in the last 2 or 3 years that it has not been a dynamic entity.
Yes, that's a good point. The building has been empty, and actually it was full of life for so many years. I'm Tom Moylan. Our children also attended St. Francis Xavier School. It was known as St. Joseph for a period of time there, but same school, Spruce and Orange, 30,000 square foot grade school. I'm a retired physician, and we've been working on this, trying to get this building into some use for our community for some time. And I'll pass the mic on to James Weir.
Yeah, good evening. Excuse me, my name is James Weir. I've been a resident of Missoula for over 20 years. Probably by now you'll recognize my accent as being from Scotland originally. And my interest in the St. Francis Xavier campus comes from a long abiding interest in architecture, urban planning, urban landscape, and how people relate to that, and how we can preserve the major historically significant buildings in any community for the enjoyment and use of future generations. And I think St. Francis Xavier is a prime example of that, because it relates right back to the beginnings of the state of Montana.
Thank you so much, James. And we also have with us tonight Tim Bernard. Tim's a builder. In fact, I think he just came in off the job. Tim, can you get your mic to work there?
Oh, yeah. A couple things to think about here. We're seeing a little bidding war going on for Roosevelt School here in town, proving the worth of old buildings, being worth millions. And what their proposal is right now, the reality is to spend $250,000 to bulldoze this and make it into a parking lot. It'll cost. We have a firm bid from a reputable contractor, which will cost a lot more, and that's not me either. I'm willing, any work that I do for this project, I'll be doing for free. But we have a reputable contractor here in town who does commercial work. And for $250,000, we can get a sprinkler system, new lights, a couple bathrooms, some new windows and doors, and a new roof, and the building is usable as is. St. Pat's, which is hardly low-rent business here in town, rented it for 3 years, and they moved out a little over a year ago. The building is sat empty. We have people that want to come into the building and use it for a daycare. We have a ton of proposals.
Thanks, Tim. Where are the focus? So we have a broad range of issues tonight to cover, and that is everything from what the building could do to, or buildings. It's actually a whole campus of buildings. But what's more useful tonight is, what is of great interest tonight is we're looking at the early history and how the Jesuit fathers came here in the beginning. And it kind of started with Ignace Lamousse, an Iroquois Indian who came with the fur trappers. And that was our question. Who is Ignace Lamousse? Mary Frances?
I first got acquainted with this whole body of material in 1981 when Bruce Barton and in connection with the museum and the art museum and the university and the historic museum compiled panels and had quite a mission, what they called a mission event. One of the people that was featured there was Father Schomburg, who is a Jesuit, and at that time he was elderly at that time, and he had been working for 35 years in compiling the history of the Northwest. And one of the things he said there, he said the whole story about the missions in Montana had sort of been lost in the dust of time, and that this was a fantastic way to bring it about. So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to take another look back into it, into the time. And the time we're talking about was that Ignace Lamousse came across from New York, wasn't it, Tom? Didn't they come across through the
Yeah,
Go ahead.
basically.
You know that.
Yeah,
sure.
basically, what was happening for 200 years and more in the East Coast area was it was a land rich in furs and other resources and the beginnings of European settlement. And so for 200 years there had been this interface of European culture with the native cultures. The Huron, the Mohawk, the Iroquois, the many different tribes. And it's an entire field of study, of course. The people of America before the Europeans arrived had a culture, they had a history, and they had a civilization. In fact, it was their civilization that made it possible for the Europeans to survive when they first came here. It was the sharing of how you live in a wilderness that enabled the early Europeans to survive. And among the early Europeans to come were the Jesuit fathers, Father Isaac Jogues, Father Brebeuf, and there were efforts to teach the Indians about God and about the European religion. And of course, we know that the Indians and the Native Americans had, of course, a spirituality of their own, and they recognized the Great Spirit, and of course, so there was that element of seeking. So that the Jesuit fathers and other missionaries were somewhat welcomed as they brought with them not only an insight into a faith that was viewed as powerful, but also they brought with them the implements and ways of a culture from Europe that were seen as potentially useful. I mean, small examples being cooking pans and firearms, but there are many other useful implements that that came with, of course, with the Europeans.
But Ignace then did find his way eventually from Canada down here to be with the Flatheads in the Bitterroot Valley. And starting in 1831, he was telling them, he was actually the first teacher, and to tell them about the Christian God, or about the God that the Black Robes had talked about. And so he started to make these journeys back from the Bitterroot Valley back to St. Louis, where the Jesuits were. And he took his young sons, they were only, I think, 10 and 14, something like that, to the first time, and they met with Bishop Rosati and in St. Louis, and so they begged him to come, and he didn't have any. He had so few Jesuits then, and so Ignace came back with his sons and then went again, and at that time, Ignace was actually and all of his companions were killed. And so this was another unique thing in the tradition of a Christian culture coming into a native culture. It's usually that and this was true on the East Coast, that there was a lot of massacre and martyrdom. But here, it was the Indians seeking the Black Robes that were the victims, that were the ones that were killed. And so this was, again, very, 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 very unique. The other thing that's unique, Tom mentioned something about the spirituality there. And there was, in the tradition in the Bitterroot, there was a lot of foreshadowing or almost prophecy. You know, there were the stories of Shining Shirt, who said, and these were stories that he had gotten from the trappers back from they started coming this way in 1743, and he talked about the Black Robes, and the Black Robes would come. There's another legend about a young girl, a little Mary, that said, "This is the place that we will build a church." Then there was a vision of little Paul. So by the time the Black Robes did come, I mean, the people were, it was just a fulfillment rather than a surprise.
Yeah, thank you, Mary Fran. And so we have this context of this amazing fact that Montana, the original contact, European contact in Montana then was the Jesuit fathers. Essentially brought, for better or for worse, and you know, we have to say that, you know, the European culture to this state. And James, you've had some ideas off and on about what, you know, say the meanings of history can be in relation to current events. And
well, I think one of the things that maybe we need to, or maybe from my own perspective, that I'd like to emphasize is why are we here to preserve St. Francis Xavier campus? What's the point of doing it? Why are we on TV? Why are we here? Why are we always on every month doing this kind of thing? Well, I think one of the best examples I can give you is there's a new initiative out there by thehistorychannel.com. And this is what they call Save Our History in America. And they are promoting this, and they are putting documentaries on TV. They are, actually they have, you can apply for grants for your pet project, and they have about, I think it's $250,000 available, and you can get a grant up to $10,000. But anyway, last night I was watching TV, and I was watching the History Channel as I normally do, and this program from the History Channel has been endorsed by our present First Lady, Laura Bush, who, as all of you will know, or most of you will know, I hope, is a teacher. And she has said that we must preserve at least the basic fundamental artifacts, if you like, of our history. Because if children can't go to Boston and see the buildings that were there when the founding fathers signed the Declaration of Independence, if you can't touch the Liberty Bell, you know. And if people come to Missoula and they can't see where the St. Francis Xavier campus was, and all there is just a restored church, you know, we need to make sure that people preserve what is important in their life so that it gives them something to hang on to, roots in the community, and also for people to see and have hands-on and say, I actually touched the bricks, you know, of St. Francis Xavier Church or the school complex or the rectory or whatever else is out there. So I think there is a link to the program if you want to go onto our website, which is xavierfoundation.net, and there will be a link to the historychannel.com and this Restore America on there. And I think this is very important to understand why we're out here trying to preserve the St. Francis Xavier compound. And I think this program tonight with tracing the history of where the Jesuits came from, why they came, who they were, put a face to these people. They were real people. They were not some figment of your imagination. These were real people who came here to spread the word of God to the Native Americans in Montana.
Yeah.
And, and they are very colorful people. Let's explore some of these personalities then along that route. Is Father Desmet was the Jesuit. He's a Belgian, and this was around the time in France that the Jesuits were being expelled from France, and so it gave a few Jesuits were available to come over to America, which received them with open arms, and they came to St. Louis, and so that, as we said before, this was the from the Bitterroot. The Indians had traveled down to St. Louis, and finally, when they did bring a group up, there was a group from St. Louis came out, and about at Fort Hall, or right around there in western Wyoming, they they split up, and some went, the wagon trains went to California, some went to Oregon, and some of the Indians came down from the Bitterroot and met Desmet and Father Point, and came on up and came up to St. Mary that way. One of the great treasures we have and the knowledge we have about this time came from one of those priests, Father Point. He happened to be an artist, and so all along the way he did just painted what he saw. And when he was back around the St. Louis area, the Indians were quite taken. The Kansas Indians and things like that were very taken with his holy cards and things like that, because I think in their tradition, a lot of the art they did was what we'd call efficacious. They were going on a hunt. They would depict a successful hunt. And so when he would show these holy cards and that talked about conversions and things like that, it was very comfortable. But Father LaPointe, like a lot of artists, was controversial in a way, and he didn't necessarily follow exactly the Jesuit traditions either. He would go out on the hunts, and he would be involved with the Indians in a different way, and so that raised a lot of controversy. But what happened eventually was that his health did break down from the hardship, and he eventually ended his life in Canada. But he had taken all of his sketches with him.
His life he died in Canada? Yes,
eventually. He left the Flathead area, or he left the Bitterroot area and went up to Canada. But while he was up there, his superiors said, "You have all this documentation, do it." And he wasn't going to do anything with all these sketches and that, but then he did, under orders, make up this composite of work.
And as a matter of fact, I think, maybe you can just hold the book up. It's quite a book about Father Point, but with a lot of his work there.
Well, what's nice about his work too is that if he shows the coming into the Bitterroot, he gives the dates, and again, this was something that you knew that this was almost a blessed adventure, because it seemed like when they left, the big important dates were always coincided with some feast of Our Lady. And so it was either, and when they came to the Bitterroot down at Fort Hall, it happened to be the Assumption, which was the 15th of August. And you said, how do these things carry on? Well, the people at St. Mary are still celebrating the 15th of August by climbing St. Mary Peak, so these are remnants of
Well,
some of
yeah,
the,
they're more than just remnants. They're the fabric of our lives. And you've been on that. I haven't been on that climb, but I believe you have.
I did. I did just celebrate one of my decades. I won't tell you which one, but so my sister came out, and both of our birthdays happened to be in August. So we said, okay, we'll do this, and so it was fine. And we got, the tradition is you go up the mountain and you say the rosary as you go up, and then you get up to the top, which has a lookout, and you celebrate Mass. And so we start up there, and this blizzard comes August 15th, and we are just coated. And so the priest that was leading it said, let's just hustle up there and have Mass, and then come on down, and you all say your rosary on the way down.
I think you tried to warn you, if I recall, of course, sisters never listen to their sister, but as I recall, you tried to warn Betsy that she'd need more than shorts, and I can't remember if she just toughed it out in shorts. Is that what ended up with? Well,
I'd never climbed the peak before, and so it was. I wasn't much of a guide. So,
but Jeff, with this whole, you're a born and raised Montanan, right?
Yes, that's correct. Yes. In your, I was thinking as you were discussing the history, the early history of the Jesuits coming to Montana. They had dreams, and they had a vision. And I really think that referring back to the buildings on the Catholic block that we're talking about, they really represent a culmination of the hopes and vision that the early 19th century Jesuits carried to Montana. And from that historical perspective, I think it makes these buildings and their worth to our present community all the greater. Because we need to, there's really a lack of a sense of history in Missoula anymore, because there are so many people here that were not born in Missoula and have not really done any research about what places like the Catholic block really represent to the history of this community and to the state in general.
That's a really good point. It's kind of almost an American disease to consider, say, buildings and a lot of other things, even cars and things, to be sort of like a tin can that the sardines came in and you toss it, And once the sardines are, but in the case of these buildings, Tim, do you feel like there's any life left in, say, the St. Francis Xavier School building?
They're hardly getting broken in, actually. Out on the East Coast, we have buildings that are several hundred years old, and in Europe, there's buildings that are 1,000 years old or older. I mean, I was in Rome last summer. The Pantheon's a couple thousand years old. So it's not at all uncommon for building. And all you have to do, if you want to check this out for yourself, is just look at the outside of the building. And the easiest way to tell if a brick building is sound is look for cracks, and there's no cracks anywhere on the exterior of the St. Francis or the Loyola building. And so all it needs is very cosmetic stuff to be put back into a grade A building. I mean, it's 30,000 square feet. And to take a quick look at history, one of the things we're bucking up against is the problem that we've had throughout history from the beginning of the human race. And even 1,000 years ago, St. Bernard brought it up about how we were spending our money, especially within the church, on gaudiness. And on the north side, that's where the lower income people in Missoula, there are some studies out, some that have been done by the university that show a great need on the north side for quite a few of the programs that we have laid out. If you go to our website, stfrancisxavier.net, there's a decision matrix there that shows very clearly the new building, which is about 8,000 square feet that they would like to build for a little over $1 million, the 30,000 square foot building that we have existing that's paid for, how we could very easily develop the building with very little out-of-pocket cost, because we have potential there with just renting the second floor to bring in about $40,000 to $50,000, which would pay for the upkeep, some minor renovation that we'd like to do, and then also to start funding some programs. We have an excellent chance to help out the children in our community with a gymnasium. I mean, people are clamoring for gyms, all, you know, from little kids all the way up to adults. Gymnasium, we have a beautiful auditorium with a full stage. This has a beautiful curtain, beautiful stage. It's a very large, paid-for auditorium. And to let this stuff go to waste, all we need is a few people to come out and make a little noise that you care. You know, we have programs that can help you, from subsidized to free daycare, a lot of things, mentoring programs, the wealth of things that we can do, and people that have approached us. I mean, Tom has no expertise in commercial renting, and so in a matter of a couple of weeks, he had more than a dozen offers. Didn't you, Tom?
We did. We have had, in fact, the offers actually total up to something over 25 offers of interest, all the way from well, just virtually every entity. We were talking to one person that serves on 13 different boards that has to do with children and youth, and she said half of those would like to be in our building, and it isn't to be freebies. They would like to pay rent, which I think is floating something around $10 a square foot. So even if, with the two buildings that are virtually unused, we've got basically 40,000 square foot that if we even just rented half of it, the math comes out to a couple $100,000 a year just in rents, which would, of course, renovate and keep everything going beautifully. And I think you can see that Tim Bernard, to my left here, to the left of James Weir, you know, he has a lot of experience with buildings. He's a strong believer in this, and I think especially after you put in a whole day of inching forward, trying to make a house come, you know, just a house come into existence, and it's just a daily, I'm not going to call it a grind, it's a daily act of creation. It's a sculpture, you know, that you're creating, but you know the effort that it takes to create a building.
Well, could you imagine what the people who put that building together, if they were here to see what's going on, here a building is handed to these folks in perfect working order. I mean, there's very little, some minor maintenance compared to the struggle that it must have been to build this 30,000 square foot building just before the Depression. I mean, this is unbelievable. These people are turning in their graves. You know, I mean,
yeah, you can only imagine.
That's being kind.
You can only, you can only imagine the bricklayers swarming over that building. Mary?
I was going to say, I would like to go back with a little perspective and talk about what kind of buildings that we owed to the Jesuits early on. And by before 1850, we have a map up here, and all the pink designated buildings are, all those missions existed before 1850. Just on the western part of the state, and then the others in red are all existed before 1865. This is, you know, right around this is before and during the Civil War. And so that kind of, it was a strange time, because the priests, the fathers that came, when Father Ravalli did come, the time that he was here, he saw a complete people going from one way of life to another in just this short time. Father Ravalli is from Italy, and so he was brought up in the northern part of Italy, and so he was surrounded by all the Renaissance art and all the Renaissance architecture. And he came with Father de Smet on a second journey, and instead of coming from St. Louis like Father de Smet came originally, they took a ship from Amsterdam, left on one of Our Lady's feast days, and 8 months later came up the Columbia River. And so he made his way across from that way, and design, as I said, designed Cataldo Mission to look very much like his the church that was in one of his homes, one of his villages. I think it was Valdo or Vado, but anyway,
in Italy.
In Italy, yes. And so he came, and when he came, these are such providential, these are stories. I guess this is another thing, that history is just really that, is just stories. And these stories have this import. When he left Amsterdam, for some unknown reason, an Irishman showed up and gave him a going-away present, and you know what it was? It was 2 millstones. He brought those millstones all the way to St. Mary. And what had happened earlier, there were Jesuits there a bit earlier, and they had planted wheat and things like that, but they were not getting really a benefit. They were boiling them and using them this way, and until he brought those millstones, they weren't really getting the benefit out of it. He also had a past experience in ironworks in northern Italy by Lake Como, and so he brought all these talents with him, and really did. They started with the agriculture and things like this. So it really made a fantastic change.
It's
Could I?
go right ahead, James.
Maybe
Certainly.
Maybe what we need to do is to go back to the map there and maybe orient the people viewing as to where the main modern day, like Missoula and the Pacific Ocean and the Columbia River are, so that
Okay.
people get an idea of what we're talking about there.
Okay, this is the Pacific Ocean over here. This is the Columbia River. And then you would come through Lasco. Eventually, this is
the Loxa?
the Loxa, and you would come where, say, Lolo is, and then you'd go down the Bitterroot to the present St. Mary, and or you'd go north to Missoula and up to Ignatius and up to the Flathead Reservation up here.
And there's just one other thing. I don't want to hog the whole show, but I was going to ask Tim, on TV, there's a program that shows these professional demolition people, you know, the big bang, where they wire up all these buildings, and, you know, there's a big bang, and they replay the thing over and over. People will maybe get an idea that the people who have the money or make the big money, like in Las Vegas and Hong Kong and that kind of stuff, they don't bother about that. They just go in, if it's in the way, they just implode it, cut it away, and build a new one. So how difficult it is for people who don't know building to refurbish and rehab and redo a building, you know?
Well, especially a building like this is primarily the shell. That's the most expensive part of, because it's basically large open rooms. So your greatest cost is just in your shell, your roofs, and your roof structure. Now, we would like to put a new skin on the roof. The roof is fine. It just needs a new skin, which is a periodic maintenance of every 15 to 25 years, depending on what type of a membrane you put on the roof. And then we would like to update it while we're doing it, to put in a sprinkler system, even though obviously it's gone 80 years without it. But that would be one of our biggest costs, and then some new windows. And then you just slowly go through it. There's actually a lot of people that have gotten a hold of me, civic groups, both within and outside the church, that would like to come in. And I've rehabbed a lot of buildings before, commercial buildings, and it's real easy to just do it section by section and just work your way through it. And so there's no large outlay of cash. I mean, there's no upper end. If you have the money, someone's going to come here and people will design it, and you can spend $50,000 talking about the color of paint. I mean, there's no problem, and there's plenty of examples, and I have examples of people that have wasted tons of money in the secular world and in the Christian world. But we have such an opportunity here to do something for people. It's just, people really want to do things, and Missoula is a giving town, but it's hard to have a place to plug in.
Well, one example is, for instance, young families. You know, anybody that's around young people, such as it's been our privilege since we have the children to see then when they start to have their children what they go through. And it's your parents are both working these days, and it's people are concerned about their children. What are their children? Are they safe? Are they in a good environment? Jeff Stevens has been, as a longtime Missoulian, you've served on many commissions. You know this town very well, and I mean, and you've served in many different capacities over the years, and on boards and commissions. What is your sense of, say, the community support for the type of thing that we're talking about? Say a community center use for that, say, and partnering, for instance, partnering with the community, Jeff?
Well, my feeling is that if you ask and if you provide people with the opportunity and the challenge, they'll meet that challenge. You know, I've been involved in a lot of volunteer community-based groups for the last 20, 30 years. For example, I'm involved with the Carousel for Missoula, and I think everyone in this community knows what happened there. The enormous community response that came along when this proposal was first put forth. And I think the same sort of thing can happen with St. Francis. Another example is the Dragon Hollow Playground next to the Carousel. I was involved in that project right from the start. I was served as a site captain and paint captain on that project, and I can tell you that the outpouring of resources and community support was enormous on that project. We built that facility in a period of about 10, 12 days, and we had 3,500 volunteers out there getting the job done. And you know, I think we can marshal the same sort of resources and enthusiasm and support for renovation at the St. Francis Grade School.
You know, that's a great point. You know, and another one that comes to mind is Lowell School. That it's another Dragon Hollow type of playground facility has been built at Lowell School. It was the same. It was the same. It was similar. I mean, in that a bunch of workers, guys and gals, got together with hammers and saws and did something for the kids.
Absolutely. Of course, the playground there was designed by the same company that designed Dragon Hollow, and we basically used the same formula at Dragon Hollow as they did there. Another example of community support that I was involved in was also the new Missoula Children's Theater building. And that's again another example of people coming forward and with their donations and their ideas and their resources to make something really major happen in the community.
And there's a building that was 6 months from becoming as I recall, it was going to be an auto mall. And I mean, and everybody felt terrible about it because here's this magnificent central school that we all take for granted now, but it's easy to forget that that there were a few people that I guess they were considered odd ducks at the time, but you know, for coming up with such an idea as, hey, let's use this empty building for a children's theater. Now, the Missoula Children's Theater is a worldwide icon of theater and of reaching out to children, and it all goes back really to the leadership of those original people, Jim Caron and Mike. At the Children's Theater, you know. Mary, you?
Well, we were, you can hardly imagine Missoula without it now. I mean, you can, every time we have visitors and everything, we always check and see, well, what is the theater doing? You know, as a place to bring people. I want to go back just on a little bit of the history thing was with Father LaPointe, the artist paintings. He got to know the people so well that he didn't idealize them. It wasn't that Europe at this time was really excited about the mystique of the Indians, and things like that. But he was, I think, very well accepted among the Indians because he was so honest with them. He has paintings that show the storyteller, or he shows what he called the dandy, the one that was always decorating themselves, and even the flatterer, but he has this wonderful little painting of it shows them in the river fishing for buffalo, so it was these funny stories that, but it was that these were just a few people, and this effort here in the with these Jesuits, all of them, it really used them up completely. I mean, they gave everything. Father Ravalli came here. When he came, he was in his early 30s. I believe he was a little over 6 foot, a little over 200 pounds, and he died in the Bitterroot Valley at age 72, and he's a frail, but intense person, and but he's left more behind than his health.
Well, yeah, and it might be worth just mentioning. Some of the buildings still exist. You talk about builders. I mean, here they build them out of logs, and here's a log building.
That's his pharmacy.
His pharmacy is still down there, and
1866.
And his church, St. Michael's Church, which is the forerunner of St. Francis Xavier, St. Michael Mission from out at Hellgate, the building has been moved out to Fort Missoula, where it continues to hold together and to be a marvel of early construction, early log construction. Having been to sea myself, I can't resist the one image here. And that is the Liberty ship, and I've seen those ships, and I doubt if you'll see very many of them on the oceans anymore. They were really built for one trip. If they were torpedoed, no great loss. They were built for $1 million apiece and sent across in huge convoys, and one of them was named
Anthony Ravalli.
Yep.
The Anthony Ravalli. There's the Ravalli Courthouse, and of course the site of St. Mary. This was in 79. It's on the grounds of St. Mary's Church down there, and that's actually Father Obercenter. And it was just up at St. Ignatius helping to celebrate the 150th anniversary of St. Ignatius. So these Jesuits do go on and on.
And well, the amazing thing was their travel abilities. Father de Smet was, he's kind of the famous Jesuit. They say he did the traveling and the PR stuff, and the guys that did the work were Father Point and Father Ravalli and some of the others. But
right.
those are just sayings, I guess. But
yeah, this was this map here shows the white dots over there. This is New Orleans. It's a sort of a conceptual map that LaPointe did, but this is the Louisiana and St. Louis, and clear up to Lake Superior on this side, and then over here in the northwest. But this was a time.
Each one of the white dots is.
Yeah, it was a settlement or a mission.
Each one of the white dots is a mission.
Yeah, and you realize the other thing is that when they came here, everything was in dispute. This was territory. It was the British were still making claims, the French were still making claims, so nothing was really settled, and so when the government did start to make inroads, the Jesuits were there as a buffer to the government. Some of the treaties that the government made and then defaulted on or didn't do anything literally for, say, 20 years or so. The Jesuits took up the difference, and they brought supplies. They brought thousands and thousands of pounds of equipment, and one of the just trying to get a idea of investment in order for a Jesuit to get here from St. Louis was at that time $1,500, and in '81 they told us that would have been equivalent to $15,000. Then De Smet raised money in Europe to bring over thousands and thousands of dollars worth of supplies, equipment, and schools. And the mission history, just to kind of cap it off, was that Father Obenserner said it was sort of divided into 4 periods. That period of 1841 to 54 was the De Smet and Ravalli time, and that was the beginning times. Then this was the strong mission times, and then there was from 1854 to 62. There was actually, the missions disappeared, pretty much. Like they said, that was a very contentious time, what the wilderness and what bad weather and poor crops couldn't do by defeating people, that there was a lot of defeat and hardship because of peoples, and mainly it was this idea of the non-natives wanting the area, especially land and things like that. So, and then there was another period, 1862 to 72, which was sort of the time when the cities, Virginia City, Helena, and some of the non-native cities started to get to catch hold and to grow the gold, and there was various things came into there. And then finally, 1877 to 1909 is the Cataldo period, and that's the period that brings us up to these buildings, because Cataldo then was the Jesuit, is known for starting the schools. He went and he started schools everywhere, and eventually even got the Jesuits established into the Browning area. So it's his signing the papers, building the buildings, that makes the direct connection with all these earlier Jesuits to what we've got now.
Could you refresh my memory? When was the Cataldo mission built?
Oh, gosh. That is a hard question.
Actually, Father Cataldo, as I recall, went from here.
See, it's between, it would be, let's see, the mission was actually designed, the mission that I was showing here was designed by Father Ravalli. So that had to be in the, he would have made those plans in the 40s, before 1850.
Yeah, I was thinking it was in the 1840s or very early 1850s. So, so you're talking, very early on in the history of settlement in this part of the in this part of the country. Well, and I've been in that mission. It's a remarkable structure. It was, I know it was built by the native people, and considering the resources they had available and the tools they had available, what they created is nothing short of amazing in my eyes.
And I believe that that is considered the oldest building in Idaho.
I believe it is. Yes.
Looking at these, especially the paintings, from a historical perspective, what a technical resource these are for both the Native American people and for the American society, where if you wanted to know what it was like on the frontier, those paintings are so realistic, so well drawn, and obviously so authentic that you can imagine yourself right there. How did they build the buildings? How did they transport? What did the people look like? What did they wear? What kind of countryside did they have to traverse to get to where they wanted to go? And I think this is a tremendous resource for historians and for research people. And I didn't know there was anything like that out there.
Well,
it was marvelous,
That's also one of the things we want to get going in the building, is not only as a part of our daycare, but also a library where we can show all this stuff for people to come into town, for your children to come, have a safe place to stay, and learn something, not only about the history of America, but the history of Montana, both from the Native American and the white settlers. and how we came together and worked together in the beginning, and the different things that we put together.
Well, I know
Yeah.
we went all through university and that, and we never learned this history.
Right.
And I don't know if they're even teaching the Jesuits this history. I'm not sure, but anyway, we're one of the other things that I think is interesting. If you look at this map here, this is a contemporary map, and we do have now states delineated and all that. And if you look at that, it says Mission Territory, USA, and guess what? The Mission Territory is all green, and so there we are. So we're still a mission territory.
Oh, absolutely we are.
Well, and as Tim pointed out on a previous show, Tim, you can say that better than I can, but with
Well,
seven,
we had, there's only 25% of the people in Missoula that attend a regular church, so that clearly means this is mission country. The majority of people do not attend any type of church. I mean, that's not just a Catholic church, that's any type
Yeah.
of church, and that is something that's going to change, but that's beyond the scope of this. The biggest thing here is we all have a chance to do something for our community, to feel good about it, and especially in this season of giving here, where people are trying to come together as a community and help one another. Here's an excellent opportunity for different people to lend their expertise, both financial and just of their own time. And it's a great way to plug in to help build the future of Missoula. I mean, because this would be, it would be the largest building for children that as a community center, you'd have 30,000 square feet. Even if we take out the second floor to provide income, we'd still have over 20,000 square feet, a large auditorium, a large gymnasium, and still about 6,000 square feet of classrooms that can be used for a variety of things. There's dance people, folklore people, the daycare library that I've mentioned before. We have a full-size kitchen to help give these kids that come in a good meal. I mean, the opportunities here are endless to do something positive. And what a location, downtown. People can come if they want to go downtown, and they could leave their kids here for a few hours while they go shopping during the day. In the evening, the latchkey problem for after school, which is something we're working on. We have the university here has a ton of students that are gearing up for this type of work and social work. And Mary Fran, as a young woman, she ran a house like this.
A neighborhood house. But what excites me, Tim, is the possibility or the program or the ministry, if you will, of making it serve. I mean, the actual getting in there and cleaning it up and doing the work and transforming it into the whatever community center type that the neighborhood needs. And because that, to me, is the wealthiest program. This was what it reminds me of what Father Ravalli would quote when they would, Lucille Evans did a fantastic job. It's called Good Samaritan of the Northwest, and the one quote that she describes him, she says, he had said, it was a quote from Corinthians, but it's, I made myself all things to all men in order to help at least some of them. And that's what she called him. She says he was a priest, physician, artist, mechanic, but it is also a missionary too. So it was, it's just getting started. I think that's the first, maybe that's the first step. And I think because I can just see it snowballing or rolling and gathering.
I think what
if it
you're
once
dealing
got
with a
started.
lot of times, and everything starts with a small group. Tim, you got that ice rink going from, it was one person, the vision of one person, and this stuff is catching, and it's a great opportunity to say overcome inertia, and get away from what you could call checkbook Christianity. Write a check, send it off somewhere, and you've done your good deed. What Mary's talking about is hands-on, roll your sleeves up, paint the place, sweep the floors. Sure, we need experts to do the specialty stuff,
Well, actually, there's not a lot of complicated stuff to do. The bulk of it's all done. That's the beauty of it. I mean, other than putting the roof on, which could be done, but it'll be easier just to have a roofing company do that, and the sprinkler system, but the rest of the thing, the windows, the doors, it's a lot of little projects that can be done with just one or two people that know what they're doing. Then a lot of it's, you know, you sop up a lot of people that, you know, like painting the walls, putting in a new wall here or there, but then getting the programs going.
The programs, boy.
And there's tons of programs that are out in this community already, aside from new ones. And one of your biggest costs in running a program is in your overhead. And the overhead is where you do your mission, to have the roof over your head. And if we can provide a place, and one of the beauties, it's almost like it can be like a shopping mall where we can have several different groups in there that can work together. And instead of having to run around, you can just go down the hall to someone else. I mean, the possibilities are endless.
And actually what you're talking about exists currently, you know, over in Bozeman, the Emerson Cultural Center. There's a group here in town, I don't know if they've even got a name yet, but they're bidding on the Roosevelt School. But really, you know, our building, you know, could very easily satisfy the needs that they're speaking to, which is the kind of things. Dance studios, art studios, places where kids can take music lessons. All of these things happen in the Emerson Cultural. I mean, it's a very large school that didn't have a use, and you know, but it evolved into what it is now through community efforts. James, you're well. We're not.
Well, let's continue this next time. We can carry over and do some more on the history next time.
Okay. Okay.
We've just barely scratched the surface, really.
Oh, it is an amazing story, and it's a good story.
What I was going to say is that we're not pioneers. Look what happened with Central School. It can be done. You know?
It has been done. Yeah, we're not making any new
We're not
ground.
doing something that's never been done before.
Right. There's no new ground here. It's just, you know, not letting a few people. It's just helping a few people not make a big mistake.
Yeah,
That's what
and
we're
it's
trying to
and
do.
but I mean, for all of us, it is new ground in the sense, you know. I mean, but there are roadmaps out there, just like there were for the early Jesuits, and or let's say,
Well, we
I
have
guess
some
the early
veterans that have
Jesuits.
played. I mean, Jeff has done several projects, and I did a lot of work on that, the Sleepy Hollow, as one of the laborers who came in and, you know, pounded the nails and shortened the boards and helped put it all together.
I have to correct myself. I guess the early Jesuits actually wrote the maps and drew the maps. But so we are the Xavier Foundation. We are St. Francis Xavier School. We thank you for paying attention with us. This videotape is available at MCAT if you're interested, and we are here for you. We'll continue next time. Save St. Francis Xavier School. Thank you very much for viewing and being with us tonight.
So den Queen behoort kon,